Big Brothers Big Sisters of Middle Tennessee is an organization you've probably heard of before, but do you know how they change children's lives? Because they do in a big way. Joining us today to talk about the program is Carly Southworth. She is the Vice President of Programs. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
As I mentioned, you all basically have a mentorship program to where adults will have this big or the little sister or little brother, and they help them in their ways and kind of navigate life and help them in their journey. But explain to us just what kind of impact it makes on these at-risk kids.
Sure. One of the unique things about our program is that each child that comes in really has their own individual strengths, areas of growth, and goals. And we try to identify those in partnership with the parent or the teacher and the child. And then that's what the volunteer mentor, or the BIG as we call them, works on with the child. So for each child, that's something different. That could be making more friends. That could be doing better in school than they have in the past, or learning a new skill, or tapping into a passion or a strength. So each child, the outcomes for each child in our program really are different depending on that child and their individual person and who they are coming in. And that's what I love, is we get to meet them where they are and really just walk alongside them in those things they've identified for themselves.
Explain, Carly, if you don't mind, how involved someone is with their little in some ways. And basically they are paired up with just one person, is that correct?
Correct. So we pair up one volunteer mentor with one child. And the involvement is, sometimes people have a misconception that they're replacing a parent or they're serving in a parental role, and that's really not the role of a BIG. The role is to support that child, walk side by side, and encourage positive, healthy youth development with that child in partnership with the parent. So they are required to see the child once a week and spend time doing things that they decide together or that promote positive youth development for that child.
We mentioned the children involved in this program, the youth, I should say, because you had mentioned that there are teenagers, are at risk. So talk a little bit about how the youth is, how they're signed up to begin with and who participates.
Sure. We specifically seek children who are from single-parent homes because we know those parents need support and that children need an army of adults, really, of positive adults. And so when there's a relationship already lacking, we like to look for kids that are already starting off with a parent raising their hand saying, I'm doing this alone and can I get some support? So single parent homes are one of our biggest focuses. And then we also have a program called the Rematch program where we specifically look for children that have an incarcerated parent and how we can support them. And sometimes the incarcerated parent is the parent that actually refers the child and they say, I know my children need this. So there are different pockets of youth in terms of coming at us with risk factors that we serve, or kids that aren't doing well academically and a teacher might refer, or are really struggling with peer relationships and positive decision making. Those are probably the three biggest areas that we look for youth.
I was going to ask you if the organization Big Brothers Big Sisters works with other organizations and even schools to be able to hand select certain kids, because that's obviously a process that you want to be very particular about and put them at ease and make them comfortable. So
Correct.
Obviously you have a great relationship with a lot of organizations in town.
We do, and one of our primary requirements of kids coming into the program is that they want to participate. So regardless if an adult or a teacher or parent refers that child, they also have to want to be in relationship with a mentor, because the adult is not hanging out with the mentor, the child is. So, but we do partner with schools. We have a school-based program, which a lot of people don't know about, where the volunteer goes to the school 1 hour a week and doesn't transport the child but spends time at the school with the child. So we have really strong relationships with the schools that we're in.
Okay, talking about the littles obviously that are involved, obviously the bigs you want to be able to say you have to meet some requirements too.
Correct.
What would those be?
Well, we have two different programs. So for our community-based program, where the volunteer does pick up the child and partners with the parent and they're allowed to go out in the community and go to the park or the movies or a ball game, you have to be 21 and up. And there are some eligibility requirements that you can find on our website about criminal background, experience with youth. For the most part, our volunteers are normal folks in our community that have said, I want to support a child in our community. So you don't have to be a teacher or a social worker or someone who's even had experience with youth. And then for our school-based program, we do take college students, and we even have high school bigs in that program, as well as working adults. So the age requirement is different for our school-based program.
So we could be talking just a couple of years apart in terms of the little and the big, in some instances,
Yep,
obviously.
correct. But really we're looking for folks that can form positive, healthy relationships with the child.
Let's talk a little bit more, Carly, about that specific relationship, because I think a lot of people are probably curious to know, one, how involved can I be? But two, what is it that's required of me when I do actually get a little? Am I taking them to the movies? Am I just chatting with them, on the phone to kind of offer support? Or what is it that's needed most?
The answer is yes to all that. So sometimes you will go to the movies in our community-based program where you can transport the child. You'll go to the movies, you'll go to a ball game, you'll run errands. We have littles who love going to the car wash because their family has not owned a car before. So sometimes just bringing along a child in your daily life and role modeling those daily skills is really important. And then you'll also keep in touch with the child over letters or phone calls. Kids love getting mail when you're on vacation. And in our school-based program, they do not leave the school. So they're spending time, that hour they're spending together is playing games, reading, going to the playground, interacting with that child's peers in the lunchroom to see what those relationships are like. And they're also able to keep in touch over school breaks and have that relationship via phone or letters. So.
A friend of mine at a former job was a big, and he had his little come to work too.
Yeah,
so
we love that.
obviously they probably enjoy that aspect of it too.
Yes. I think the biggest piece, when people say what is a mentor, it's a word we use a lot, but sometimes we don't sit down and really define it. But the biggest piece of being a mentor is being a role model and seeing someone in a workplace, or we have had kids come to our board meetings at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and that's the first time they're like, what is a board? I don't know what a board of directors is or an advisory board. So those life experiences are really important, as well as mixing it up with fun things and getting out and exploring new interests and exploring Middle Tennessee. So.
Sure. All right. So a recent study shows that little brothers and little sisters are less likely to engage in risky behaviors being involved in a program such as this. So why would you say that's the case?
One of the main things we want our volunteers to work with our kids on are their own aspirations and goals. And when you can get a kid excited about that and tap into it and start planning for their future, they begin to think about decisions they make from that angle. How is this going to impact the goal that I've set for myself if I choose to smoke, or if I choose to drink, or if I choose to hang out with these people? So I think by a volunteer standing alongside a child and saying, what do you want for your future, and really tapping into that with the child, then the child starts to think of themselves and the decisions they make for themselves differently. And the role modeling piece, like I said. So volunteers talking to them about how they keep themselves healthy. They walk in the mornings, or they exercise, or they eat their fruits and vegetables, or they go to the doctor, and just having those conversations about what life is like as an adult and how you take care of yourself and be independent.
Sure. For so many reasons, obviously, you can probably easily understand why it would be beneficial for someone who is a really young child. But for teenagers, it seems like sometimes they struggle with even communicating with their parents or a parent or teachers. So this probably obviously also encourages them to have another outlet to be able to speak to somebody, and I imagine that that's beneficial as well.
Yes, and surprisingly, our youth report that they have stronger relationships with their parents from having been mentored.
That's excellent.
And I really think that comes from learning to communicate with adults in a different way, being able to articulate your goals and what you want for yourself and having those conversations, and the mentor also looping the parent in on what's happening in that relationship, so the parent can say, hey, wait, he didn't tell me about that, but I want to know more about that, and then goes back to the child and has a conversation that hadn't happened before.
Yeah, we talked about involvement in terms of what, the bigs, what's expected of them, but really in terms of breaking it down with time on any given week, is there expectations by the organization to say, you know what, if you really want to be a mentor, we really require that you spend this much time, really to make it fair and equal for all kids to benefit in the program?
We ask for at least an hour a week with your little. In the school-based program, it will be an hour period. You probably will not spend more time than that because they have to get back to class.
Sure.
And we want them to learn math too.
That's
and then the
understandable.
community-based program, if you go to a movie or something like that, you might spend 2 or 3 hours, but it is seeing your little once a week for at least an hour.
Okay. Also, let's talk, Carly, about the program in general in terms of how long you will have this little, because some people have that relationship for a very long time.
Yes.
Others, you end up having, let's face it, a lot of people have to move for jobs and different things like that. So what do you require as far as that's concerned?
We require a year commitment for either program. I am proud to say that in our community-based program, our average match length right now is almost 4 years. So we have folks that on average are lasting 3 years longer than we ask of them. And in our school-based program, we have an average match length of about 2 years. So once people get connected, and we spend so much time really making that match and thinking really carefully about what's going to start this match on the right foot. Is this the right person for this child? Is this the right child for this volunteer? And I think that really makes a difference in our average match length too.
And if you all do have a situation to where the child maybe moves or you know, the mentor moves, how do you rearrange to where you can kind of pick up? I mean, obviously that relationship might be a pen pal situation at that time or stay in touch via email. But do you try to quickly then replace that person with someone else so that they don't miss a beat when we're, you know, when we're trying to live life and continue that encouragement for them?
Yeah, we assess that situation on a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
So some children, we really want that match to be the right match. So we don't match quickly just to get a child rematched or a volunteer rematched, but we want it to be another good fit. So there's a lot of thought that goes into that, but we are open to rematching people if they would like to be rematched.
When someone says, I would like to be a mentor of somebody maybe in elementary school, middle school, high school, do you all say, you know, if you're qualified to, this is the specific need they have? Do you know at some point these at-risk youth, you know, this is what they benefit from most? Can you kind of explain to people what it is that would be essential for these kids of all ages? Because obviously it differs depending on who the little is.
Yeah, so part of our process if you're coming in as a volunteer is we require you to go through an interview.
Okay.
And that interview is pretty in-depth, and we ask a lot of questions about your preference and your experience with youth so that we can kind of talk with you about what that right age range would be for you based on your expectations.
Right.
So if you really want to help a kid with college, we're not going to match you with a 6-year-old because they're not even thinking about college yet.
That's right.
So we really consider that on the front end when we match, and then each of our matches is supported by a professional staff person that's helping guide that match and the goals that the child has identified, and also help guide the volunteer on how they can support the child. So giving them resources or activities or language to use with that child to support them depending on the age of that child and their areas of growth.
For folks out there listening today and wanting to know, okay, this sounds like a program I definitely want to get involved in. I'm sure there will be. How do they go about making that first step? Do they give you a call? Do they go to the website, or what can they do?
Sure, they can give us a call at 615-329-9191.
Okay.
And our staff would be glad to answer that call, answer any questions they have, and then talk more with them about our requirements. Or they can go to our website too.
Okay. And does the process take a while? Should someone expect, you know, this is going to take a couple months until I can be assigned to somebody?
Yes.
Or what is that time frame?
Yes, so we will first sign you up to have an interview with a staff person, and then you're asked to go to an orientation as a new volunteer to learn more about our program and more about child development and the needs of the children we serve. And then our staff does an amazing job at really being thoughtful about looking for that right little for you. And sometimes that takes time, especially depending on what area of town you live in.
Okay. Carly, to make a lasting impression with everybody, as you already have, I know, but just in terms of, you know, hammering home again the importance of a mentor, what would you say the biggest reason is as to why this is essential for at-risk kids?
I think kids need positive, caring adults in their lives, especially now in the crazy world that we live in. I mean, you just have to turn on and watch any news to know that kids are having to make tough decisions and process tough things. And I think the more that we can surround kids with positive, caring adults, the more likely they are to make positive decisions for themselves and be successful and reach their full potential.
Absolutely. Well said. Carly Southworth with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Middle Tennessee.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
So nice visiting with you.
Thanks.